No.
Yes.
Thank the Parnes HaShavua, Amy Moshe Baum, sponsoring Lilu Nishmas, Moshe's mother, Aryela, Basif, Shmuel Chaim HaKoin, Zechor Levach, Misham Shavin Aliyah, Olfam Shav Simcha, and Nachitz. Okay, we're on page Kuf Ayin Ches. Kuf Ayin Ches. Ayam Darkecha. Aish. Contending with our Tayva's L'or HaBolsham. V'kashiyachnis es ha'yidiyas halol la'havanas ha'leiv asai mekoichem yargish or v'cheshek lama b'nisayim. Instead of looking at it at our Tayva's as chalila punishment or a moment of misery, we're able to look at that moment as an opportunity to strengthen Davka, the Or and the Cheshek that we have for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kol ech lefi inyano, yisakim la'atzmo Hashem meir lo, ba'ofen shiyamuchan l'hoya b'zeh beis ha'nisayin, l'dugmani, and sort of a summary and going forward examples of machshavas that a person can try to have at the moment of the Nisayin. Aleph. Yizbonin sha'atayvis, reviewing a little bit. Yizbonin sha'atayvis hemayim meluchim, shlom meravim klum. To try to concentrate and remember that tayvis are like salty water that don't satiate, that don't satisfy at all. They don't quench a person's thirst. Ki atanug hu rak me'Hashem yisborach. That nakuda of tanug, this goes back to the beginning of the Maimer, that nakuda of tanug is of course only from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'yachshav im loas gaber yili hagosha ra, to try to think that if I'm not going to be misgaber, that it's going to feel terrible. V'avsid chas v'shalom is hatanug amiti, and I'm going to lose that true tanug, which is dveikis b'Hashem Baruch Hu. V'es ha'atzlocha b'chol ha'avoda, and the hatzlocha of that Avoda that Hashem set my way, that moment of having this Nisayin. Badrabah. Rakim esgarbi yel tanuk. How does the person feel the tanuk of Elokus at that moment of the Nisayin? By being misgaber, by saying no, by turning away, by vayonas v'yetzet. Beis v'yachshav, and to concentrate, to try to think. Kamiyoka hazman hazeshel Nisayin. That this is a very valuable moment of the Nisayin. And at this moment, I could be misraimim. I could have an aliyah. Mitzad sheni, but if I fail, yili mar michaysa hatzlacha. It's going to be bitter. Michaysa hatzlacha, by failing. Gimel. Liachder ba'atzmo. Rak b'koach hamid ha'achshav b'nisayin uchel ha'karbelis ha'madrega haba. That the reason that I'm having this nisayin is because it's time for me to move to a higher madrega in my life. It's time. Hashem has brought me this nisayin, the same way that He brought Avraham Avinu with nisayin to move him ahead in his life. So too, I have this nisayin, and only by passing this test am I able to move to that next madrega. Ki bezgarbu sheli achshav, my misgaber now, v'ani mechinis hamadrega haba, ani mechinis hamadrega haba, u'miskadem l'kras ha'or she'yorli acharka. By passing this, by being misgaber, I am then preparing myself as a kli for the next madrega, and for the or, for the light that Hashem has prepared for me after this nisayin. And if I do not succeed, then not only will I not have an aliyah, but this nisayin, as we all know, will just repeat itself. Hashem will just send the nisayin again and again and again, because it's time for us to move forward. So the nisayin will come again and again. The person has to pass, and by passing, then he's a kli to move on to the next madrega. But until then, it just repeats itself over and over again. Therefore, it's kedai to pass now. To remember that right now, the Nisayon is in this midah of netzach, victory, strength. To be menatzeach the Yetzirah. By strengthening the fire of loyalty, of faithfulness. The midah of netzach. To remember that at that moment, this is netzach. This is the sphere of netzach, the aura of netzach. The test is a test of this midah of netzach and of chesed, of ahava, netzach, ne'emanus, v'yachshav, and to think, hine, yeshli his damnus, laharis, lashem esbarach, is ahavos, even ne'emanusi. I now have an opportunity to show HaKadosh Baruch Hu my love and my ne'emanus, my loyalty. Sha'afil shekosha v'loy meirli. That even though right now this is very hard and I don't feel particularly connected, I'm not going to let go of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm not going to throw him away. I'm going to prove my ahava, my ne'emanus. V'yazke la'atzmo, to remind himself, ha'afilu shema'od kashali, even though right now it's very hard. But of course the truth is that Hashem Baruch is right here, imi ve'etzli, with me, together with me. V'ani dovok ito gam ka'is, even though I'm not feeling this, but I'm dovok to him. He's here, gam ka'is, as we spoke about last week. That it's the nature of a person that when it comes to a nisayon, a Tayva, to feel like Hashem is not here. This is a very low and disgusting moment of my life, and Kodesh Baruch Hu is gone. That's not true. Kodesh Baruch Hu is imi ve'etzli, and I'm dovok ito gam ka'is. Therefore, is ametz ma'od l'natzeach. I'm going to try my hardest l'natzeach, Kodesh lo l'srachik mimenu, in order not to be far from him. U'kedei l'sameach, so in order to be mesamech, kivyach l'Hashem, gives the biggest nachas to Hashem Baruch. The greatest nachas that Hashem Baruch has is when a Jew is menatzeach. Is when a person chooses HaKadosh Baruch Hu over that moment of that pleasure. He chooses HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the greatest nachas ruach that Hashem Baruch has. We all know that with our own children. Those who are zocheh to have children, when a child, you see that. Let's say that the kid is, there's a whole group of chevra, and the chevra went and did something bad, and your child, you found out that your child didn't go with him. Your son, your daughter was menatzeach. It's the biggest nachas in the world that a parent has. That your child is menatzeach. Your child remained ne'eman, faithful to what you've taught and to what Hashem Baruch taught. That the child is faithful. There's no bigger nachas that a parent has than seeing a child who's a ne'eman, who's loyal, who's faithful, who's strong. It's the greatest nachas that a parent has. And therefore you could give Hashem tremendous simcha. To give Kodesh Baruch tremendous simcha. Again, it's not what the person feels at the moment of the nisayon. He thinks that Hashem is so unhappy with me that I'm even having this nisayon. That's not true. Hashem Baruch sent you the nisayon. He's not unhappy with you that you're having the nisayon. I mean, if you went and you did something to bring it upon yourself, but that's what we're talking about. The moment that the person has a nisayon, Hashem's not unhappy. Hashem is sending you this himself. And the greatest simcha that he has is if you are able to be menatzeach. He is burning kama haklipas roy. And to think, kama haklipas roy. The kama he mitzarim kivyochel Hashem Baruch. To think about how, if God forbid, a person gives in to the other side, how much tsar that causes Hashem, how much aggravation. V'yor la'atzmo liyas ne'eman la'Hashem Baruch b'nisayin. To try to be mechazik oneself, to be ne'eman la'Hashem Baruch b'nisayin, to be faithful to Hashem b'nisayin. V'yor la'atzmo, to say to oneself, Ani me oihave Hashem Baruch. Oihave Hashem sinara. person should have a certain psukim in his back pocket and to take them out when he needs them. And this pasuk that we know from davening, from Kabbalah Shabbos, from Tilim Oihave Hashem Sinara, the person says to himself, I want to be among those who are Oihave Hashem and Soinei Ra, who I love HaKadosh Baruch Hu and I hate Ra, and I'm choosing Hashem, who I love, over the Ra that is presenting himself to me this moment. I want to be among those who are Oihave Hashem, who are Oihave Hashem. Umemela, when the person is mechazik himself with this yigal me'arai, he'll be disgusted with the ra. Oihave Hashem, I want to be among those who are Oihave Hashem. Yismach lezgabe, the person can have tremendous simcha lezgabe. To be misgabe ki yachshav, bisgabrus yachshav, ani mapilas hara. That with this his gabrus right now, I am mapilas hara, as Oive Hashem. I am giving a klap to Oive Hashem, to the Ra, which is an Oyev, which is the enemy of Hashem. I'm now being menatzeach Oive Hashem. I'm an Ohev who's destroying or who's giving a patch to the Oyev. Machshavos ke'elu, these type of machshavos. Of course, the hardest thing of all is that at the time of a Tayva, at the time of the Nisyonos, to bechlal have a machshav, to stop and to think. That's already 80-90% of the nitzachim. Of the nitzachim is to be able to think, just to think, not to get lost, but to think. I was talking to somebody yesterday who's in the habit of smoking a lot of marijuana, and a young woman, and so I said, "What's the story with you? Like, what do you smell from it? You know, what's going on with you with this?" So she said, "What's the matter, Rabbi? You know, it's not even against the law. In New York, it's not against the law anymore.
It's still against the federal law."
Yeah. All right, I didn't snitch on her. So she said it's not against the law, and she said everybody does that and so on. So I said, I asked her, do you every time you smoke, you make a decision, you think about it, and you smoke. You make such a. Is it something that you decide to do? Like, when was the last time? So she told me, whatever, an hour ago, whatever it was. I said, you made such a decision that Higia Hazman, that I now am Muchan and Mezuman, that I'm going to do this? So she said, think about it. It's just. So I said, that's not good. It's not good. I'm not saying that it's the most dangerous thing in the world. I'm very, very much not happy with what's going on with all of this, and I never had in my life. I never smoked in my life, and I would approve of this whole thing. Nevertheless, the ikka here is, I said to her, because her Hebrew was more of her natural language. I asked her, "At sholet et sholet alayich? Are you in control of this, or is this controlling you? If you're telling me you made this decision, every now and then you decide that I'm going to smoke a little bit." I said, it's not great, memela, but I suspect that that's not what's happening. That's a shalait alayich. It's controlling you. You're not controlling it. You're not controlling it. It's true with eating. It's true with other things as well. It's for a person to have a snack or to nash here or there or something. But if it controls you and you're not in control, whatever that is, it's not just marijuana. It could be chocolate, whatever it might be. You know, the post-perm shalachmanas removal plan. Whatever it is, it's a sholeit halacha. It's a l'ratzon Hashem. If it's ruling over you, then it's not the ratzon Hashem's bar. That the guf be in control of the neshama. It's not that. It's not the mahalach. So I said, so try next time. Think to yourself and think. Don't just light up. Stop and think. Must I have this now? Why am I taking this now? What's the tachlis of my doing this? Why? What is this? It's to have a machshava.
It becomes a chemical reaction.
I understand. I know what that is. Whether it's nicotine or whether it's something else, there's an addictive quality to it. But nevertheless, the mind of a person can be shaylet on these things, can rule over these things. And a person is not, and a person that, all of these people say that they're not addicted, of course. The same person who's chalishing for his l'chaim, in the middle of davening or something. But a person has the ability to be shaylet over that. Therefore, you see that even people who are lo aleinu are caught in terrible addictions. If they set aside time in their life and they go for help, and they go to rehab or they whatever it is at 12 steps, and they work at it, they could be matzliach. They're not chayiv to continue on with the addiction. No one's chayiv. The body is not ruling over the seichel. It's not. It's just you just are not using the koiches that you have to be minatzeach. And when you go for help, which is the first step, means that you're thinking about it, and you go for help, then you're able to see how you have the strength to be minatzeach. That's it. People are paying thousands and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars for rehab programs all over the place. They're going to rehab programs which are saving people's lives. But the whole avodah a person could do just sitting in his chair in his living room. That's to be silent. I remember that this was many years ago. My sister and I were teenagers, so my sister felt that she was putting on weight, and at that time they were starting with different diets, and there was a book on the table that one of these diets. My sister was reading this book, and I was there. My father said to her, "What's this book?" So my sister said, I'm trying to lose weight." So my father said, "Just don't eat so much." It's the Moshe Weinberger diet. It's a lot cheaper than the stuff that they're going to the programs and buying a fancy scale. And so stop eating so much. It wasn't that that's how he lived. It was to have a certain behavior to be controlled. I think it's one of the ikar midas that we saw by my father, Zechron Levacha, that he was always in control. There wasn't in the Indian, not with temper, not with Tayva, it was in control. It's possible. Then just don't eat so much, and you'll lose weight. And a person has to think and be in control. But that's hard. So these are techniques, machshavas that a person can have. But the beginning is to be able to have a machshava, not just get swept away. To have a machshava, to stop. And therefore, many times over the years I've mentioned that what the normally Melech Susi said, that that he Tayva had a strong temper, and that what he would do, there was a time that what he would do is that he made him a hachlata, that when he was feeling anger, before he would say anything or react, he would go up to a certain place that he had and to put on a certain coat. I know it doesn't work if you're not in the house, but he said that always by the time that he was halfway to getting the coat, it was ready, it was finished. The whole Indian was ready. It wasn't shaykh anymore. But the key is that moment to be shoyleit, not to lose oneself to the guf, and to be in a place of machshava, to stop and to think. A person thinks even when it comes to something which is not us, like eating too much. How am I going to feel after I reach into this thing and eat some more of it? How am I going to make it feel good? I'm not going to feel comfortable, and it's not an issur, but just to be able to stop and to think. But here, when we're talking about a Tayva that's forbidden, this is the machshava of being an Ohev Hashem. and giving a market to the Oyev Hashem, which is this Isser. Machshavas keilu neisnos koyach v'cheshik b'his garbus. The ikar is of all these machshavas that the time of an Nisayin, the time of a Tayva, is a time when a person can be mechazik himself with cheshik in his garbus. It's not a negative time. It's a time to mechazik himself with koyach, with cheshik in his garbus and so on. Because a person is not just trying to stay away from something that's bad. It's not just staying away. It's something which is positive. To be an ohev Hashem, to be menatzeach, to give this as a gift to Hashem and to use this as an opportunity to move to the next madrega in one's Avodah Hashem. It's not just about staying away from something. It's accomplishing something. It's an Nisayon is to accomplish something. Not to fall into something, but to accomplish something. And the ikuz latzlich in the Manas Hashem's Baruch u'samecha, to show my ne'amanis to Hashem and to show myself that I have the strength to place HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to place my neshama ahead of my guf, to put my neshama ahead of my guf, to put Hashem's Baruch ahead of myself, and that's a bittul to Hashem's Baruch, to mevatel oneself. That you took Hashem's rotzen, and Hashem's rotzen was stronger than the rotzen that you had at that moment, and that's a tremendous bittul to Hashem's Baruch. Okay, let's see Reish Tzadik Vav and Reish Tzadik Zayin. Reish Tzadik Vav. It's important to focus on the Nisayin, to understand what is the Nakuda of a Nisayin. What is a Nisayin? Let's say a person at the moment has an Nisayin, to look at something that he's not supposed to look at. It's a moment of that Nisayin of Kedusha Seinayim, Vistaklus, of looking. If the person thinks, so the usual way that a person thinks is, should I look at this or should I not look at this? Right? That's the usual way a person thinks. Should I lift up my head? Should I turn my head? Or should I not? If a person does that, it's very hard to mitzliach. It's very hard to mitzliach. Should I look at this or should I not look at this? Which is that's what people think. First of all, there's that very, very strong yetzer that says, one time, it's not a big deal. Lo nara, it's not so terrible. The Yetzer is also Marabiza, or the Yetzer says, who says such an Isser, I'm not doing anything. Is it a deraises? Maybe it's not even a derabbanan. I'm not doing anything. This is the usual way when it comes to that. When a person just says, should I or shouldn't I? That simple way of should I or shouldn't I is very often unsuccessful. So the ikir avoda is, when it comes to a nisayin, is to focus on the pnimius of the nisayin. It's not should I or shouldn't I. That's not going to work. Most often that doesn't work. It's the pnimius of the nisayin. And to understand that the nisayin is not only should I do this or should I not do this. But there's actually something very deep that's going on. It's not like a little child. Should I reach into the candy jar or not? It's not. That's not all that it's about over here. It's something very deep. The real question is, are you mechuber to Hashem right now? Even though you're not feeling close to Him, are you mechuber to Him? Are you connected? Do you believe in His presence? Do you believe in His will? Are you mechuber to Him? Are you connected to Him? Well, makibo, do you recognize His being here? Do you recognize Him? Do you see Him right now at this moment in your life? It's not should I or shouldn't I? Of course that's what it is, but it's not so. Should I or shouldn't I? Or are you thinking, no, there are other things. There's Hashem. There's time for Hashem, but there are other things. There are other things also in the world. And a person who loses at that moment and gives in, and the person should think about this is what the Nisayin means. It's ki'ilu tzoeg. It's ki'ilu. It's as if he's screaming out. He's screaming out that there are other things. There are things that are more important. There's something that exists outside of Hashem. And of course, this is only Hakadosh Baruch Hu sending you this Nisayin. He's mislabish. Hashem Himself is mislabish in this Nisayin. But when you fall for the external, for the Tayva, instead of for the Nitzaitz of Elikus that's here, which is the Esgaber, the Mizgaber, so then it's Ki'ilu, you're saying, Yesh Odvam Chutz Ma'Hashem. There are other things, it's not just Hashem. It's not just Hashem. When a person looks at the Nisayin, he's able to have that machshava, to look at the pnimius of the Nisayin, not just should I or shouldn't I, but the pnimius of the Nisayin, then it's much easier to be misled. It's much, much easier to be misled. Kevin she'ein in the Kudah Pratis. Because he takes this from being just a Nakuda Pratis, a little Nakuda in his life. What's so bad? It's only one time. He takes it from being a little Nakuda. Ela hachroza klolis v'sharoshes. Ela hachroza klolis v'sharoshes. Achroza klolis v'sharoshes. That it's not just one time. No, it's achroza. It's a proclamation. Klolis v'sharoshes in a very deep way that the person is saying, I'm choosing now. I am choosing myself over HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I am opting to side with the Oyev instead of being an Ohev. It's a much deeper choice than, okay, one time shouldn't I? It's a much deeper choice. I remember there was a conversation I had with somebody who, unfortunately, in jail now, and I was talking to him about that moment of making that choice. That he didn't know that he was going to get caught, but doing something illegal, and you wonder what were you thinking at that moment? So he wasn't thinking about the fact that, which was the consequence of what he did, that he's going to lose his wife, he's going to lose his connection to the family, he's going to lose his license to practice what his profession is, he's going to lose everything. He was just thinking about. He wasn't thinking. It was just the Tayva, and I'll just do this, and then life life didn't move on. And if you think about if at that moment, we were talking about, and he was crying a lot, and that moment, if you would have tried to picture the faces of each of your children, think about each of the children. Stop and think about Sarah and Rachel and Avram and Yitzchak. Think about each of the kids, and imagine their faces, and how they're going to feel when this happens to their father and the father is taken away and so on, and think about how it's going to affect their lives, how it's going to affect their chalila, their shidduchim, how it's going to affect your whole future. 10 years, 20, 30 years from now, how it's going to be affected. It's not just, one time I'll do this. I'll do this one time. It's a much bigger picture than this one time indulging in a tayva and hoping not to get caught. It's much bigger than that. The difference, of course, is that when it comes to bas Avodah, you could have that delusion that you're not going to get caught. When it comes to Hashem's Baruch, you know that you're always caught. There's no such thing as not getting caught because it's 24-hour surveillance. You know, that's just how it is. Nowadays, even on the streets, there's a lot of cameras all over the place. But with Hashem's Baruch, it's surveillance. There are no breaks in the system. There are no lapses in the surveillance.
Yes, there is. When they killed Epstein.
Huh?
Yeah. No.
I didn't hear.
When they killed Mr. Epstein.
They killed Mr. Oh, you mean the guy in jail? The person wasn't thinking about the bigger picture. He was just thinking about that. What am I doing with all this? It's this one thing. I'm just having this because I have this need, and I'm going to have this pleasure through this need. And the guy's sitting in jail, and his whole life is totally wrecked. His whole life, no marriage. He's a wreck, a total wreck. And then afterwards, gewalt. What was I thinking? You weren't thinking. So the whole avodah is for a person to think and to recognize that when it comes to uvacharta b'chaim, that it's always that choice between the guf and the neshama, between the oyev and the ohev. It's always that choice. It's never a small inyan. It's never something which is insignificant. It's always that big decision of and that's what Kodesh Baruch was saying. Make the right choice. Choose me. Don't choose that. Choose me. It's always big. It's always a klalistic thing. It's never that afilu pamachas. It's rak pamachas. It's just one time. It's always a choice between the neshama and the guf, between Kodesh Baruch and the ra. What is it though?
I think in certain instances, or most, it's almost impossible. That's why Chazal put the Geder there. I think it's almost impossible. I've heard of big people falling. And to me, it just means like all the thought in the world is a very nice idea, but that's why Chazal put these very serious Geders, and that's what I keep telling myself. You got to try listening to the Geder, because bigger people than me have
But I'm not talking about that, David. I'm talking about when you're already past the Gedarim. You already jumped over the fences and you're already in a plan. I'm not talking about.
You could win.
Of course, you're 100% right. You're 100% right that's why Chazal made all kinds of Gedarim. But you should not say that, you should not talk in the lashon of even bigger people than me and the impossibility of it, because those are exactly the kinds of words that we're talking about not having in your vocabulary. Is it true that there are some Nisyonos in a person's life that he can't possibly? So Rabbi Tzadok, we've studied some of this before back in the Yosef Tzadok. We did speak about that, and there are certain things for whatever reason I'm not going into it right now. But the Svarim HaKadoshim tell us that it was not possible for the person. There is such a thing, but mitzidenu, from our perspective, we're not allowed to have that mindset. That's absolutely not a mindset that we could have. Because then what happens to people is, for 99% of the Nisyonos that he can pass, there's always that thing that's looming in the back of his head. Oh, this is one of the things that I can't pass, and it wasn't even like a big deal. And that's the way that I not a menatzeach, not a winner thinks. That's the way that a loser thinks. And that's why there were tzaddikim, not just from the Talmud Baal Shem, but from the tzaddikim from the Balei Musa, particularly from the tzaddikim from Slobodka, Balei Musa, that they shifted in their way of teaching from focusing on man's weakness to focusing on the strength of a person, on the kodesh of a person, on the godless Avodah. It's not the same as in Hasidus, but it's very, very strong in among the Bali Musa, especially, as I said, from the tzaddikim of Slovakia. But you need to understand what that means, the kodesh that a person has. When you look in the writings of Rabbi Rucham, the Samedrash of Kelm and Slobodka, the kodesh that a person has, the strength that a person has, and not to walk around with this feeling of I can't, it's impossible. Of course, we have to keep all of the gedarim, all of the fences. We have to stay on the right side. But what happens if the person's on the other side? The second you walk into a public place these days, you go to the airport, you have to get onto the airplane. Even if you manage to get yourself, to first class somehow, you saved your points and you're in first class. But there's a mahalach till you get there, unless you like the Baba Rebbe or something, and I don't know what they do there. They wrap them in saran, and I don't know what goes on until they bring. I know that I met the Stalin Rebbe in the airport. And we were talking in the airport last year, and we were walking together in the airport. And so you're so it means David, at that point you're past you're over the fence. What fence? What fence? If you kept the fence, then instead of flying, then walk to London, or swim, because when you're in the ocean, there's a couple of fish and stuff. So you're not holding by the fences of Chazal if you're in that place. It's just the reality is that no one's blaming you. You had to get to London, okay? You have a Parnes, you have to go on the trip, but you're in the airport. You have to go to the airport. You're on a bus. You're on a train. You're walking to your office from the car, and it's a warm summer day. What kind of gather? The gather is Chazal will say schar, which means like for the Nazir, don't go near the vineyard, right? So saying to you, David, don't go to that office. Don't go to that office. Stay far away. Not only don't go to the office, don't go to Manhattan. It's a bad place. Stay on the island. Don't go to Manhattan. Once you go into the city, wow, it's hefker. But you already went. You passed the fence. You went. You broke down all the fences. You were supposed to be like a farmer, just with your cow, someplace, further out on the island where they have farms, and just your wife and waving to you from the window, and there you are, and you're just like a happy Jew, like in the old days. What are you talking about? Fences. You got in the car, you drove to the city, you broke all the fences. Even when you're driving, there are billboards all over the place. So you should say, in order that I shouldn't be over the Isra Vistaklis, I shouldn't get into the car to drive to Manhattan, because then there are signs, I'm going to look at pictures. By owning a phone, you broke down all the fences. How come you don't say that I shouldn't come to look at something that's inappropriate? I'm not going to have a phone. I'll use a regular phone. I'm not going to use a phone because I want to make a gather. I'm listening, and also you must have heard that a lot of tzaddikim that are screaming that you shouldn't have one of these things because Shema, Yavoli Deza, because you can very, very well fall into that, and the three dots. So we're talking about if you own one of these things, you're already over the fence. So we're talking about how to survive on the other side of the fence. We're not talking about you're right, 1,000%. But what happens when you're on the other side of the fence? What happens when the Tayva is in your face, when it's there? How not to get to it? Sure, do whatever you can to avoid it. Don't buy one of these things. Stay away from all this stuff. Don't have an internet. Do all the fences. Great, but we're talking about what happens when invariably, with all the fences, you find yourself, and it's in your face, because that's how the world is. And by the way, that happened in the shtetl also, and it happens to the guy on Long Island, the farm, in different ways. Because when Hashem says, "Higi Azman," it's now time for you to prove your self to yourself and to prove yourself your love for me, and so to speak, whatever that when it comes to that time, Elokim Nisus Avram, you think Avram didn't live in downtown Manhattan. When it comes time, the Shem Baruch says it's time for Nisai, there'll be Nisai, whether it's with money or with this or that, some other type, it'll be Nisai. So, and then what do? What happened to the fence? You're on the other side of the fence. No, Hashem brought you to the other side of the fence. Because why? Because it's time for Nisai. You try to avoid all the Nisyanis. And whatever fences, sure. But I'm talking about, you understand? When that's not happening at that moment. Something is wrong. There's some malfunction in the system, or you don't have a braver. You have to go to work. You have to feed your family. And what are you gonna do? So then you have to mechazik yourself. That's what we're talking about. How to be mechazik oneself in that matzav. Whenever a person can avoid that matzav, that's not what the subject is. You do whatever you can to avoid the matzav. But that's how Shem's Baruch works with us, even when you try as hard as you can. That's one of the things that I've spoken about a lot over the past few years, that at the end of the day, you could try as hard as possible to protect your children from the nisyonos of this world, but they're gonna, unless they're strong people and they want to be ne'emanim to Hashem, they're gonna face these tests. They're gonna have challenges in life. So we would like to see that the children shouldn't have to go through the nisyonos, but they're gonna have nisyonos. Every single one of our children is going to have nisyonos of this type. These types, every one of them, whether it's on the phone, whether it's in person, they're all going to have nisyonos. In their marriage also, they're going to have nisyonos. And unless they have the inner resources of emunah and hisgabrus and netzach, nitzachim, and koiches and nefesh, to understand what it means to be a yid, then all of the gedarim, all of the fences don't work. And, people were angry at me because when the whole thing started, they were making these, to make everybody to come up with the filters, and so as usual, how these things, they spin these things. I was never saying that people shouldn't have filters. You should have all the gedarim. But what I'm talking about is all I'm trying to talk about is how to strengthen Jews that b'shas ma'aseh, when either the filter's not working, or the filter's down, or they're in an unfiltered environment, which is the world, 2023. It's not just about your phone. The world is unfiltered. Even if you don't have a phone, the world is unfiltered. So you could rally from Hat bis Morgen. You can go to the stadium and scream out and hold up things against the phones and yell and take your phones and everybody together. We're going to all burn our phones and all that stuff. You can do all that stuff that you like, but the world is unfiltered. So unless your child has koiches inside of emunah and his gabrus and a cheshik to be a Noivad Hashem, it's just a matter of time. It's just the phone. That's the distortion that's kilo. All that has to be taken care of is to get rid of the phone, to get rid of the internet, and then hamilchama nigmara. Then the war is over.
So you have to get rid of the New York Post.
You have to get rid of the world. Before there was ever such a thing as what? Before there was a cell phone, I predate internet, and so do you. So there were nisyonos, but it was a tzaddik. There's nisyonos. Either you have the koiches, you don't. If you don't have those koiches, then whether it's before the internet, with the internet, without the internet, you don't have the koiches yourself. So all they talk about day and night is about the filter, which again, I don't disagree with, the gedarim. But it's just, in life, Hashem's Baruch brings the nisyonos, and it's going to come one way, they come one way or the other. And if all that your kid is depending upon is the external filter, preventative thing to stop him or her from doing something he shouldn't or she shouldn't do, but not anything inside of himself or herself, because she doesn't have real emunah. He doesn't have real emunah. He's not an Avodah Hashem. Doesn't really connect HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So then what happens? You see what happens when once they leave home and they can buy their own phones and their own thing. This is what's going on. So we're going to delude ourselves to thinking that it's just a matter of somebody getting a filter on the phone. It's a gather. Everybody should try to do what they can. But at the end of the day, that's what the world is. It's a world of Nisyonos. It's a world of Milchamas. It's the Avodah of the Beinani, not of the Tzaddik. That's it. That's what it is. And Hashem Zoch has the biggest nachas, like the Alter Rebbe talks about in Parak Lamed Hey in Tanya. It's the biggest nachas ruach the Baruch Shalom has, the simcha, the joy of a Beinani, being able to give nachas ruach to Hashem Zoch, is saying, no, I'm not going to do this. That's the misikas, the sweetness of being a Jew, is to be misgaber. But instead what they're saying is, no, you don't have, like you were saying, it's impossible to be misgaber, and therefore I have to depend upon Gedarim. And the Gedarim that other people made, great people, made all kinds of Gedarim, built all kinds of fences, all kinds of filters, right? I'm depending upon them. Doesn't work. It will help. It's better than not having fences, but at the end of the day, it's like the joke about the lady that says she's not going to have any more Napoleons. She's a fresser, and so she's not going to go to the bakery. It's a famous joke, and she made a simon that unless she finds, she has her favorite bakery in town. She lives in a little town with a bakery, and unless there's a parking space, she's not going to stop. So it's a very busy street, and so she said that after circling the block 10 times, she got a parking space. She kept on going until she got the spot in front of the bakery. So she made a nice gather. She had a kunst. The kunst was, only if I find a parking space in front of the bakery, I'm going to indulge in my favorite mezainas, right? If I find a parking space in front of the bakery, and sure enough, because that's how it goes. Because that she made a gather, which is good, but a gather, sof kol sof, is not you. It's even though if you made the gather, it's you put up a fence, and then the b'shas ma'aseh, the same one who put up the fence crosses over the fence. Unless a person on him, where he is in the world, he says, I'm not crossing over. Nothing in the world will get me to move from my place of who I am. Nothing. And that's only with the monis to Hashem. It's only with the vekas to Hashem. That's what this is all about. That's the deeper way of looking at the Nisai. This is not what's being taught to the kids. What's being taught to them is yes or no. No is bad. If you do that, it's very, very bad. And therefore, these are the following things that have to be done. Or these are the filters, the external things to prevent you from being the animal that you are, or acting upon your animal instincts instead of being a yid, instead of being a Aish Yehudi. It's all this external stuff. So you're not building the person. And then the second that they don't have any of those things, so then it's hudra haritzua, and the person is unfettered, unbound, and then there's no telling what's going to happen, which is what's going on. A lot of chaver that used to be very, very orthodox, and they're still on the program. They still officially keep Shabbos and go to shul, but as far as Tayva are concerned, not like when they were yeshiva bar. Very far from when they were yeshiva bar. Very far, and it's because if the koiches of the person are not developed inside, so then all the gedarim are stopped. He doesn't have them anymore. Mommy and daddy were together. School was together. All these things were fences in his life to keep him a step away from the bad thing. So he had all these things. He was being watched. He was being monitored by his parents. His life was. But then when he's free, that's it. Then it's a question of whether you're an ohev Hashem or ohev Hashem soinei ra, sinu ra. Whether you're a person that's ohev Hashem and soinei ra, ohev Hashem sinu ra, and that's what we have to build in ourselves and our children, together with the gedarim, of course. But ohev Hashem. But you ask a kid, ohev Hashem, who's Hashem, what's Hashem, ohev Hashem? What are you talking about? Ohev Hashem. So don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, you do this. So they try to scare them or intimidate them, and they'll have some big rally and get together and tell them what's going to happen if they do this thing. It's going to fail. What's going to happen to them? It doesn't work. You could scare, you could intimidate, you could bully, you could frighten, you could all this stuff, and certain people who are weaker, more easily frightened and intimidated might help for some time, but B'Sof Ma'aseh, it doesn't change the person, doesn't build the person, doesn't work on that day of the Nisyonos, and the day of the Nisyonos always comes.